options, and
No.
this is Career Talk on careers in media. Thank you for coming in such numbers. My name is Carl O'Brien. I'm education editor in the Irish Times, and I'm joined here on stage with Ronan Ortega. He's head of film, art, and creative technologies at IATT in Dundee, and has a background in film and documentary making. I'm also joined by Aisling Ivers. Aisling is a digital content specialist with the Irish Museum of Modern Art, and it's a very interesting story about her career journey. But first, Ronan, to you. You know, when we talk about careers in this area, like, it's very, very broad. You know, there's all kinds of programs out there. And I'm conscious, like, if I'm a student who came up here today, like, there are dozens and dozens of stalls, hundreds of prospectuses, thousands of courses. Could you give us, like, a quick, you know, bluffer's guide to the courses in this area and the kind of opportunities there?
Sure. Hi everyone, thanks for coming. Gosh, it's a thing that people I don't think realise, particularly when I talk about the media, I would think, like, you'd be talking about the creative industries more generally, the screen industries, I suppose, my own particular industries. But if you take the creative industries as a whole, like, we don't really have a handle, actually. We don't think about the size of it. You know, you talk about farming, or you talk about, you know, science or technology and things like that. But the creative industries, we're doing our own work on this, and like, if you look at it from a European perspective, it's actually bigger than the car industry in Europe. So when you talk about the media and the creative industries, it's huge, like, in terms of what it encompasses. So that you're talking about everything, and it's not just kind of being on TV or being on film or making art. There's a whole panoply of people working in the background in these kinds of things. So even the guys here, the tech guys, who are helping with the event here, like, they're, you know, sound engineers, you've audiovisual engineers, you've all sorts of things. So to answer your question, you have courses that can bring you down a very practical route, really, really practical route, into being a technologist in different kinds of spaces. And you might think, oh, I've got a creative bone in my body. I challenge that, but, you know, if you like working, you know, in a practical kind of environment, there's loads of them. And then, I mean, Aisling could probably talk more about this. There's a whole world of technology and creating content in a technology environment. There's things like animation, VFX, games. But even, like, if you look at the big tech companies like Accenture and any of these companies, because the thing, we do work with Accenture, we're a big kind of technology company, and they have 11 TV studios of their own where they're making content, like how they communicate internally as a company. They're always screaming out for editors, for example, as an example. But then there's arts and crafts, there's making, there's costume, like it goes on and on and on. So if you look at the courses, most colleges in Ireland have some kind of a course that feeds into it. And there are very general degrees as well. If you're kind of not entirely sure, well, like, I don't know if I want to be an animator, I don't know if I want to be you know, an editor, or whatever, a specific thing. That's when I was in your seat trying to think about what do I want to do for the rest of my life. These decisions, like what you decide to do and what courses you decide to do, don't necessarily define where you're going to be in 10 or 15 years' time. But if you're particularly not sure, if you do a degree, there's some really good general degrees in Canute or DCU or communications degrees or things like that, which are avenues into this world. And then you might look at specialising at a later stage at master's level or doing apprenticeships. There's loads of options. So it's kind of, that's, you know, sorry, it's very long to answer your question, but there's everything from really big general kind of degrees to very specific kind of programs which are very focused. Like there's 12 colleges in Ireland now do animation to some degree, to some version of it, you know. So, and that will bring you in different ways. So I suppose the answer is there's loads, and there's lots of options there for you that you can take that will bring you, you know, on interesting journeys and stuff like that.
And speaking of interesting journeys, I know, would you share with us your own route, because you are an arts graduate? Would you tell us why you chose that, why it matched your own interests and aptitudes, and then where it led you ultimately?
Yeah, of course. So I guess when I was sitting in your seat, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Everyone else knew that they wanted to be a doctor, a teacher, a solicitor, those kind of traditional jobs. And my career guidance counselor, teacher at the time, she told me that, you know, maybe arts might be the best choice because they get to really explore all my options. I get to see what's available in college, and then decide from there if I want to switch into another course and just kind of, I guess, explore more or less. I was just saying earlier that when I got into college, I loved the arts program in UCC, but I was supposed to be going into, I think it was an accounting class one day, and I walked into an art history class. And I knew it was not the accounting class straight away because there was artworks up on the screen, but I couldn't exactly leave because there was only 5 people in the class. So I sat there for the entire hour, and I just fell in love. I kind of knew straight away, this is what I want to study, this is what I want to do, and how can I do it? You know, do I have to be an artist to work in a museum? Do I have to go down that route? And the more I looked into it, the more I saw all these jobs that are available within the arts, like marketing, like accounting, like advertising, anything. And from there, I went on to do a master's in management and marketing. And again, those students wanting to be in the top 4 companies, wanting to work in the kind of legal world, the business world, and then there was me going, I'm going to work in a museum. And it was a journey. I did a placement in the Glucksman Contemporary Museum. I went to Free Gallery down in Cork, and then worked as a digital marketing executive for Cork Opera House. And then finally, during lockdown, I got really lucky, and a job came up with Hima. And they created this new role that looks at digital communications and digital projects within the museum. And I got it. I fit the bill. So I've been there now for 3 years, and it's just fascinating. I think it really kind of, it's after teaching me a lot about that world, but also that you can't really predict how your career is going to go, because the digital marketing that we've been doing in Cork Opera House is actually very different to what I'm doing at Hima as well, because it's website management, it's virtual exhibitions, it's everything and anything digital comes down my way. So it's yeah, every day is an adventure.
Interesting. And Ron, you know, I was talking to someone earlier about creative media, and I was saying there's the one thing that is common really to all of them, and they said, well, really at its heart, it's about storytelling. You know, would you agree with that? Really, in terms of ultimately, you know, you're all involved, whether it's documentary making, journalism, marketing. Oftentimes, it's really about telling a compelling story.
Completely, yeah. And even at a baser level, I think, like, it's about curiosity. Like, you know, like if you're fascinated by people's stories, if you're fascinated by how stuff works, and understanding then that everybody in the whole involved in the whole process, whether if you're working on your own, or as I really enjoyed, working as part of a creative team, that you're all working together to try to tell that story, like, you know. And so yeah, I mean, ultimately, and being able to identify what is a really good story, like, in you know what, like, there's a lot of boring stuff out there, like there's a lot of rubbish TV, like, you know, and you just know it, like, I mean, people say, well, what's wrong with that film, or, you know, the story doesn't work, it doesn't hang together, you know, that kind of stuff, and so I'm a great believer, like, things can't have to have a certain quality to, you know, to appeal to people, and they need to have heart, like, they need to get you here. On whatever level, I mean, sometimes it's just whatever, like, it's information, but even then, like, I've had rows with stand-up journalists about whether or not current affairs or things like that need to be engaging, or, like, I use the word entertaining, which is a horrible word to your average political journalist in particular. But, like, the whole world of politics is entertaining, it's bored, like, you know. And so I suppose my point really is just, it's about finding those real stories that matter to people. And I think that applies to all of us, visual arts, anything that you're trying to do. It's about really getting to the heart of what's, and those things matter, I think, in terms of, and are really important as well in terms of, if you're telling bigger stories, if we're dealing with big issues like climate change and things like that, how do we tell those stories in a way that don't frighten people, and really get to the heart of the matter?
Ashley, can I ask you, you know, if I'm a student here, and again, maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed about the whole choice here, but you know, one of the messages you hear in a lot of career talks is to reflect on what your passions are, you know, what interests you. Like, what do you think, you know, if I'm a student, what are the telltale signs that might tell me that, you know, I might be a good
think I'm just going to lay it out that social media has become part of our everyday lives, and I know that it's a massive part of my role too with Emma. If you're creative, you like writing, you like reading, you like being on social media and sharing your everyday lives, or even just being on social media and scrolling. I think everybody here is guilty of it. I know I am. But if you do have an interest of, I guess, sharing and telling stories, like exactly what you were saying, because that's a massive part of my role, is making something that could be inaccessible to some who aren't experts, and making it accessible to everyone out there. And if you have a passion for that, passion to educate, I think that's the kind of direction that you should go in. There's
Give an example of something that you've been doing lately where that is a challenge. How do you turn something in IMA, which is, it's high art, if you like, how do you make it accessible to how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can go from, sharing about artworks within our collection and bringing it down to a really kind of like granular level of talking about, what themes are in it, but not this kind of highbrow kind of wording. We can also go to a festival that we're running at the moment, Earth Rising, which is an eco festival. And it's kind of bringing out a message of climate change and sustainability and what we can do for action. But, sharing that in kind of terms that people will understand. Because I think so often we read the media and we're trying to get it in our heads, we're trying to understand it. But yeah, my job is to just really bring that out to some term.
And Ronan, I'm conscious that a lot of students might figure that, listen, I am creative and I'm interested in telling stories and I'm looking at social media, but they might be hearing from their parents or their neighbours, do not go into the media on any account, go into tech, and that's where all the jobs are and that's where the good salaries are. What's the reality, do you think, for graduates emerging from media courses?
The reality is, a lot of it is based on your own passions and interests to an extent, insofar as, from a careers point of view, there are endless careers and, endless options that are good, bad, and indifferent, like any kind of sector. And the media, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, if your parents are pushing you into being in the tech industry, you can do both. You can be in the tech industry and also working in media, creating content in that world. And because so much of social media, it's more an anecdote now, videos came, and so much of what we're sharing and doing across Instagram, Facebook, all the different platforms is all video content. And that's my goal in terms of documentary making. And the skills, that's the key thing. You talked about storytelling. A good story is a good story wherever you go. And there's just different ways of telling that story. Short form, in print, in longer forms, in whatever else. There's just certain rules and conventions and ways around doing that. And so you kind of have to figure that out. And from a career point of view, I was saying earlier, I did archaeology in university, archaeology and Irish folklore, but my interest was in radio. I used to work in community radio for years, and that got me into a professional career in radio and then into television, and now I'm in education. So, it's just what I wanted to do, and it ended up being my career as well, is doing that kind of thing. So, I suppose, the good jobs there are good jobs everywhere in all sorts of different ways, and there's no, there's a generational thing. My mother still thinks I work in RT. I haven't worked in RT since 2001. So it's that kind of thing, the good jobs. But whereas now it's much more fluid, there's much more crossover, and in my head it's much more interesting. And you will find that your career path will bring you in different kinds of ways. So I'm a great believer in having a good grounding and a really good, good solid education in something that opens your mind to new ideas and opens those kinds of avenues for you. Because, again, another anecdote, the hardest thing to learn about media or telling stories is what stories to tell. That's the thing that takes work in terms of, really getting interested in the world.
I think you're constantly learning too then, because media is changing so much every single day, and social media platforms are changing so much every day. So it's a constant education in a sense as well.
curiosity thing, I think, we're constantly niggling at things and trying to figure out, how does this work? How do I tell that? And I'm terrified. I'm already a dinosaur, so it's kind of like trying to stay up with us.
That's why we're looking for you guys to be able to come in and show us the way.
And the one theme, that I've seen in a lot of the career talks, not just me, is that, what you do in college, it's not linear necessarily. So let's say very few people study history, historians, very few people study English and become creative writers, but you bring that skill set that you have, in this case in media, and you can apply it to so many sectors.
Lenny Abrams, one of the best known directors, did a philosophy of Trinity. So it's about, the cool thing about working in media is it's often your passion that you're bringing to it. It's the stuff you like doing, but it's the people that and I see we love those students who are making films at home anyway. That, it doesn't matter if they're coming to us or not, they're doodling, they're making art, they're creating little films. Good, bad, and indifferent, but they're just passionate about doing, and we'll find a way to doing that irrespective.
Can I ask you, students are here, Ash Fire Options is the one time you have a chance to talk to people from all different universities and colleges and everything else. Like, what questions should you be asking, do you think, at the stall moments?
That depends on your context. I think for me, it's about the big one for me is about, everyone says their courses have practice-based elements, that you're going to be learning how to make things, or you're going to be learning how to use cameras and all the rest of it. Dig into that. Are you really? How much time are you going to use? If you're going to be in a class of 100 students, how much time are you actually going to get with cameras? How much time are you actually going to be in spaces that are actually going to be, I dig into that in terms of, particularly in what's important to you. Dig into the material, because actually, what the modules you're doing is going to be really important. What are the big stuff of the course that you're going to be doing? But also, what other opportunities are there? What other kinds of projects are out there that you could be working on in terms of exposure to whether it's Erasmus or other kinds of things, we do really interesting projects. Our art program is, our first year is doing an exhibition in IM every year, that kind of stuff you're really getting out the door. I think, anyways, personally, it's really important. In a lot of ways, we can't teach you, lecturers can only open doors to you. You actually know a lot more about your world, what your generation are interested in, and how to. So we can show you shortcuts. We can show you about the mistakes we've made and stuff we've learned. But the thing about college is you're teaching yourself. That's the key. That's the thing. It's so different to school. It's so different to school. It's about you exploring your own learning and your own defining your own things. Because we always see that the first years coming in, they're looking for schedules and homework and that's. Whereas it's you're kind of on your own, actually, to an extent. It's not like that. You're supported. But by the time you get to fourth year, you're very independent. The idea is that you're an independent learner. And I think that's really important.
That's what's exciting about it, isn't it? You're not being spoon-fed, you're creating it yourself. And for you, Aisling, would you have any advice to students then in terms of trying to find that right course, for them? Which it's tricky, because I'm sure a lot of students feel under pressure that there is one needle in a haystack out there and I need to find it. That mightn't actually be the case, Would you have any advice to help people on the way?
I would just say be open to anything. Don't think that you have to just go down one area. If you have a passion or something like that, a dream job that you want to do. I'll full on put my hands on and say I'm in my dream job at the moment that I never knew existed back in my maybe third year or in first year of college. So just be really open, and also then when you're in college, make sure to join societies, because I learned a lot from joining societies, and it really kind of paid off when I was applying for my jobs. I was involved with political societies, which just seems so random for the area that I'm in, but I was involved with all the United Nations, debating, all that, and it just gives you a really, it allows you to network, it gives you an open experience, but it also builds you as a person for going into the working world.
Is there anyone out there who has any burning desire to ask a question? And if so, just raise your hand, and if not, you can always talk to us afterwards on the stage. But I'll ask you the same question, Ronan. What are the things you should be considering then in terms of finding the right course? Because I know you were talking about the questions to ask at the stall, but then when you're digesting all of this and you're at home and maybe you're filling your CEO form, or maybe you're thinking of further education route or whatever, what should I be thinking of?
I always think you make sure you give yourself options. Like the CAO process is kind of mad, you know, in terms of the whole points game and how do you select and like a lot of our programs are portfolio based, so that adds another layer to it. Because I'm really conscious of how it can be very tricky to do a portfolio and a good leaving in 1 year. But the FE route is really becoming much more interesting all the time. Like we have a program now, which where you do first year and second year in either Ballyfermot or Bray, and then you do third year and fourth year with us. It's in immersive media, which is a huge growing area in terms of technology and media, virtual production, Mandalorian, all that stuff. It's really, you know, becoming obviously huge in terms of how that works, and it's a really interesting world because a lot of the roles in virtual production haven't even been defined insofar as like a lot of it's VFX, games, camera, all that kind of stuff. Game engine is driving the world, but again, it's in its infancy, but it's definitely here to stay. But that's you know, that's you apply directly to the FEs for those. So there's the big thing is to give yourself options because and to not to be worried about like, you know, if you get into a particular course, there's lots of there's lots of ways in and out of those programs and stuff like that. Because there's a lot more flexibility in the system than there used to be, especially when I was in college. So there's, you know, it's not the end of the world if you find yourself in something you're not actually enjoying and anything. Because often within, because you know, the college wants you know, you can transfer to other programs, or you can use the credits from your first year and go direct entry into something else. Like, so there's real flexibility out there in terms of creating those kinds of journeys in terms of where you go. And it's just about, and I echo what Ashton was saying in terms of you've got to find your tribe as well in college, like in terms of people like you, and that's a big thing as well in terms of college. Like, you know, IGT for example is really small. Like we don't have 50 meter pool, we don't have all that kind of stuff. So you can't, you know, you have a particular interest in a smaller environment where there's small classes and stuff like that. I went to UCD and like, there were 600 people in when I was doing first year history, like, and it was like, so you have to find your little networks. You know?
Great stuff, Ronan. Thank you very much. And I think, you know, my big takeaway really from what you're saying, as well as all the detail around media, it is about following your passion really at the end of the day, isn't it? And fulfilling your potential and finding that right platform for yourself. But thank you guys, I have learned an awful lot from you, and I hope you guys have as well. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you get a lot out of the rest of your visit here to Higher Options. Thank you very much.